So we are not. Oh, oh, geez. Now he's recording. Yeah, we've been talking for 10 minutes already. So we just went through some introductions of new folks. Thanks everybody that's joined. So this is the June 11th community meeting of Crow. We're not a CNCF project. However, we operate as if. So that effectively means we have a COC, a code of conduct, which effectively boils down to be kind, don't say anything you wouldn't repeat in front of your mom. So welcome everybody. I think generally, I don't think we have any specific. Oh, we do. So Scott just added static conditions. PR is still open. Sure, we should talk about that. Let's go through milestone review, and then we can just kind of dig into some stuff. Amin, you want to walk through milestones or our current milestone?
Yes.
And is and very loaded. Is the status conditions PR part of this current milestone?
Yes. So I want to talk
I
about
thought it
two
was.
things. I want to talk about the 0.3 release. We just made this one a few days back. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we
Sweet.
can.
So I
Yes,
want
sir.
to talk about 0.3 real quick. So we made a patch. I don't know if we talked about this last week. I feel like we didn't. Um, so there's like multiple features. We're gonna publish the change log on the Slack sometime soon. But one of the major features that happened really is external references. So if you go at the bottom of this file, you will see that we have something new called external ref. So instead of um, literally defining resources like you would do every time, what is it? Should be somewhere here. What if, for example, you wanted to reference an existing resource instead of managing a new one? Say you want to like reference a storage class, a config map, you want to like just get some data from there without really managing it. External references is a good one. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's also the ability to define custom types now in Crow. You can see here that you can define something called my type, and you can give it some special values, and you can use this type in here in your specific schema. For example, your environments could be a map of string to my type, which is basically a struct of value one and value two. Um, I guess those are like the major ones. I think the other one that crosses my mind right now is additional printer columns. Right now, if you want to define more custom fields that show in your kubectl print output, you can define them in here. We still have some plans to make this a little bit more sophisticated, but this is just like the easiest way to make it work. So we have that supported for now. Um, and yeah, by the way, like all these features have been made by multiple contributors. I know there's like many other ones that I want to like write a Slack message about. So stay tuned to hear about everything that happened. Um, with that one, I'm gonna go directly and talk about 0.4 because we already have a milestone in here. So 0.4 has like way more features and open GitHub issues in it, and I'll talk real quick about the ones that make sense for from a user perspective. The first one is the collection support, basically for loops for Crow. I know like we don't really like do for loops or anything that is Turing complete, but if you look at Terraform, for example, they have what we call for each, and this is what we're bringing exactly to Crow. If you're familiar with the syntax, this is something we want to bring in 0.4. There's already I work in prototype for this, and I think Adobe already like did some contribution to this branch, and we will have that merged for 0.4. I don't want to make this like a presentation. Please feel free to stop me, and if you have any questions um about any of these features or one of other features that are not mentioned here, like feel free to do that. Um, the the other one is an end-to-end test framework for Crow. So as of today, we only do unit and integration tests. And during the integration tests, we emulate everything, meaning that we test against ACK controllers, but not real ACK controllers. We just emulate their existence and then we test the behavior of Crow. That's good enough, but we can always do more. So Barney is working on a end-to-end test framework. I think the PR is open and need some reviews. Um, for I'll just like go through the most important ones. This one, I think, to me is probably the most important feature since cross creation. Um, is drift detection, and basically, if you when you deploy Crow and create an instance like this, like let's say an application, is gonna go create the pod, the service, and ingress. But nothing will happen if you go and modify the service. I mean, it will eventually happen until the reconciliation hits again. But what we want to do is like, what if we could like watch these deployment service ingress and retrigger reconciliation the moment someone does something? So someone goes and modifies this container port manually. Crow could go and fight that and be like, no, it should be this value instead. Again, we think it should be an opt-in feature. It should not be a default feature. It could. The last thing you want is Crow fighting with another controller, because both of them think they're doing the right thing. So it's more of an opt-in feature to those who know what they're doing um, in their clusters.
Quick question, if I
Yeah.
might. I think there's like the mega feature refactor Crow to use server-side applied. I think this might be related to the support with detection, or it might have some interactions with it. Yeah, you may see I already commented on it. Yeah, I was wondering if the server-side apply would be sufficient to like determine whether there was a drift, or would be able to like be it would be or whether it would be able to correct all the drifts. Because if I add a field and I'm not the field, so the Grow controller is not the field manager, and then would go ahead and try to server side apply the original um, the original intended desired state from the RGD, the fields that were added by the user with a different field manager would be ignored by that, right?
So yes. So Crow today, for example, does not modify fields that it doesn't own. And with
Yeah,
server-side apply, that should be the case as well. For example, I'll give
exactly.
this in here. So say, I mean, here, like you define the name, image, port, and container port. Those are the only fields Crow will touch. Like if
Yeah,
something else changes, Crow doesn't consider that as a delta. And server-side apply also has this concept of, I think it's called field ownership or something like that. But there is like a something in the metadata that the server-side apply will look at and respect that in regards. Today we're doing that manually through some complex different mechanisms, and we look at everything. I don't know if you saw that there's like a package in Crow that is specific to only
yeah,
computing the delta. The problem with that one today is it does not take into consideration defaulting and mutating webhooks. So if you have a webhook that is modifying something, you don't know what's happening. But with the server-side apply, hopefully, like this the full pipeline will be solved. So it's gonna go through mutation webhooks. It's gonna go through validation webhooks first before being applied into the cluster.
Mhm. But it will be like the desired behavior of Grow would be that if I add a field to, let's say, a deployment, I add some environment variables or anything, that Grow wouldn't uh, detect this as a change and also wouldn't correct it.
That's a
So
good question.
you just described it, and I'm after some
We,
research, I'm on the same page about this. I think that's the behavior of server-side apply. My question is
yeah,
rather, is this the behavior you or we are striving for with Crow?
I mean, absolutely. The thing is that we have a lot of tests around updates, and if we see them failing with the new server side apply, we're not gonna merge that. Like we don't want to break the behavior, the extended the intention here is to just smoothly change the mechanism under the hood, but keep the same user experience. Meaning
Okay.
that Pro should not go and touch fields that are not defined in the RTD. This is what it
Okay.
means. Like everything that you don't define in here is not owned by Crow. Meaning
Okay.
that you can have other
Yeah.
maybe another Crow controller. Oh my God! Like, okay, maybe this is a terrible pattern, but like you can imagine another RGD pointing to the same resources and modifying other fields instead. Um, I can see that
Mhm.
I can see that it's very hard to do with deployments because of the array, but I can see someone doing it with some simpler resources. Um, yeah. Um, and technically, we should not have two RGDs pointing to the same resource. There is a mechanism that prevents from that today, but you got the idea. Like it's field
Yeah.
ownership is a thing, and we want to continue respecting that in the future.
Okay.
Oh yeah, thank you, Fabian. I'm gonna take a look at this as well. I still need to review the what's going on with the PR, and feel free to review as well. Like if you have some thoughts and you've worked with server-side apply, it's gonna be my first time actually. I know what is it, but I've never really like worked with an implementation of it or like some of the libraries that already exist. So there's gonna be a lot of learnings for me more than anything. So
Yeah.
um,
Don't worry. Even to ask that question, I just played around with the with kubectl apply and used server side and like checked what the behavior is and looked a little bit on the implementation. So yeah, I'm very
mhm.
new to this too.
Sweet, then
But
we can do it together. That's great.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, the I think I think probably the two last ones I want to talk about real quick. Scott is working on standardizing the crow conditions. We put this in 0.4. I think he also links a PR in the open discussions. We Scott, I know you have a PR. I think this is gonna be merged um right before current 0.4. So not right before, but for sure it's gonna be included in 0.4. So we'll put that in our review plate. And the other one I think that's also important is pruning. So basically, let's say you modify the RGD and you go and remove the ingress from here. What you would expect to happen is that the ingress is deleted. Today in Coda does not happen. Like there is no I mean, there is some sort of garbage collection, not as sophisticated as you will happen if you've done it from an RGD itself. So this is what's coming on next with the pruning, and I believe server-side apply is also helping with that. I think it's called some apply set thingy that Barney is working on. Um, maybe not this one, but he got an apply set library that that's gonna help us with this. I see a question in the chat. Is Crow going to have owner references? Is that the question you wanted to ask, Craig?
No,
Oh,
no,
sorry,
not
go ahead.
exactly. That's one of the questions just to like govern ownership, are you allowed to touch that resource? Are you allowed to make changes so you don't have another controller that goes and interferes with that? Say, for instance, you've got a custom controller that's done with Cube Builder and they're managing the same resource. If what I've seen is there's a ping pong that happens between the one or between the two. One changes a field, then the other one picks up that reconciler, that drift change, and then it makes a change, and they just ping pong between each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just in terms of trying to maintain that owner reference, like, hey, listen, Crow's owning this resource. No other controller should be making any changes to this specific resource. I know that can work with fields and server-side apply, but I think this was like a precursor to that initially. But while you think about that, my main question I wanted to ask with regards to pruning, especially what we found with KCC, is the ability to abandon a resource. So we have a lot of resources that are quite critical, like a Cloud SQL instance. Somebody maybe goes and changes an RGD and removes the Cloud SQL instance, and suddenly we get a deletion that happens. Is there going to be some kind of deletion prevention mechanism so that these kind of things can't happen? You have to add a specific field if you want to remove this specific resource, or follow something that KCC does where you actually abandon the resource. You don't really delete the resource itself, but you unmanage it from the Crow resource, I would say.
I like it. Yes. I don't. I think we have a GitHub issue on this. I don't remember. Maybe we have it here, maybe on ACK. But I fully agree with you. I think an abandon mechanism should be possible in Crow as well. I would imagine maybe you create a secret or a config map and you don't want to delete that at all. You want to just like leave it behind and just like do not consider it part of the DAG. Yes, that should be possible. That's definitely something we need to do. I think this in ACK, so we have something in ACK very, very similar to this called deletion retention. So you can like retain a resource. I think similar to KCC, they call it abandon. In ACK, it's called retain.
Yeah,
So we're thinking about like
underlying kind of what you'd think of as providers and support this. Is there like, would you want this in a Kubernetes resource, or is it specific to underlying cloud resources?
I think
that's
it's
the question.
specific for cloud resources because
Yeah.
you want that kind of deletion prevention to not happen. We've had it in a few cases when we were upgrading KCC where certain things were changing and moving around, and suddenly the Cloud SQL instance is gone. Everything. Luckily, we have like snapshots and backups of that, but that database is completely gone. And that's why I think the abandoned resource came into play with KCC. The fact that that I need to change fields or something, and suddenly I can't modify this KCC resource. I abandon the resource so it doesn't get deleted, so I can delete the KCC resource and recreate it with that specific set of fields. And it then takes ownership of that current object again. And it's business as usual kind of thing. Or somebody by accidentally for instance, in this RGD, in a composition, goes and removes something, doesn't test it properly, releases it, and then suddenly it causes havoc where it deletes resources.
Yeah.
It's really just a prevention, because currently we've got this orchestration platform where we have Puppet and Terraform that does most of the stuff. And in there, you actually have to do a full run of that specific resource with a force destroy Boolean flag to say, I'm telling you, you're allowed to destroy this field or this specific object. And then that initiates in the next run to say, okay, this field was specified, it was marked. So if you remove this resource now, we will delete it, kind of thing. It's just that kind of safeguard.
Yeah, I think the reason I ask is I think there's different levels, right? Like, so a KCC, ASO, a cross-plane provider, like I think that sort of in the stack, it's sort of like the runtime right? It's sort of like at the bottom level, you have that. And then this was the issue I was thinking about. I mean, you brought up, which is the idea that you could do this with a Kubernetes resource as well. Which is sort of like a little belt and suspenders, but it also might be what you'd like. Like you might actually be cycling through like a different RGD, or you might want to like adopt or migrate a resource in and out of CRO without interrupting the actual underlying Kubernetes resource. So I think this is valuable at both levels where like, obviously KCC, ASO, ACK, cross-plane providers, like everything sort of on the metal side would support that, in varying ways. And then CRO also, it feels like an interesting, useful thing. I think the flip side is this something that's interesting at like for Kubernetes resources? I think is the question I have. Like beyond the sort of a cloud resource managed by a Kubernetes resource, like yes, delete it and preserve the resource in the cloud. That seems like a pretty obvious one. Is this interesting to people? The idea of like preserving, say, in this example, the application.
The other use case I can think of is if, say, for instance, this CRO resource created something like a secret, and that secret's like a sealed secret or something. It's been signed with a specific key.
Yep.
You don't want to lose that specific thing, but you want to retire this resource and maybe migrate it to some other resource in the meantime.
Yeah.
So you
And
want to
then you can
unmanage
adopt
resource.
that. Yeah, you could adopt that resource into another one, that kind of thing.
So
Yeah.
for like a migration strategy to a new resource or new resource type, that could make sense.
Yeah, that feels good. Okay, cool.
I just linked a GitHub issue in here. It talks exactly about this. Call it like, I think we have a naming issue in Kubernetes. We call it detachment in here. I don't know why I call it detachments, but it's the same mechanism as an ACK retain, KCC, abandon. And here's like the concept idea is like detach it from the DAG. When you're going into the deletion process, just skip this one. Remove your labels, remove your ownership preferences if you have any, and just like leave it alone. I'm thinking about putting this in 0.4. What do you think, folks? I think I don't believe it's very important to implement. Sorry, very complex to implement. This strikes me as like as a 5 lines of code. If annotation exists, skip the deletion.
I mean, I linked another issue in the chat, which covers more than just detach. It's lifecycle modifiers. It's a more comprehensive look at this issue. It's in the chat. 542.
542.
Yeah.
Do
Similar, but a little bit more complete. Yeah.
you want us to close 1.1.8.3, Barney?
We don't have to close it. We can just cross-link it under.
Mhm.
It feels like a duplicate. I don't think we need 1.8.3, but I can see here you're talking also about like the update and create. So tweaking the create and the update behavior.
Yeah, I think the explicit idea represented in 183 is still, it could be folded into this. I would just keep it open and cross-link it.
Yeah.
What do you think of putting this in 0.4? At least the deletion, because I'm like, okay, the life cycle for all of them, maybe we would need to review all the semantics, but I think the deletion one is definitely the one that makes a lot of sense to me right now, and something we can include.
Is there a PR for this? Yeah, I don't think there is, right?
No, there isn't.
No,
Okay,
there's-
so Yeah, abstractly, I think the O4 is looking pretty chunky as it is. I don't see a lot of pressure to bring in more. Like I think we could uh maybe close out O4 as it is and add this to an O5.
Yeah,
Offline?
I wanted to implement this, but I wanted to wait for the apply set to land because then the implementation would be in a different place once the apply set lands.
Mhm.
That's one of the reasons I didn't send out a PR
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, any thoughts? I know you always have thoughts, so I would love to hear your thoughts.
This problem is solved so many places. I don't know. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's solved so many places that it needs to be here, or do you think that there's an external solution for this that we don't have to build it into Crow?
You have to take a dependency on something, and every implementation is slightly different.
Yep. That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah.
Is there an implementation that is like somehow like somewhat better than the others? Like, do you have like a preferred way of dealing with this problem or examples we can link in the GitHub issue in here?
Um, we implemented it at LinkedIn by adding a special annotation and then rejecting stuff in webhooks. It's pretty aggressive. But if you don't do it in the webhook, things get marked as deleted, and then you can't undo that, right? It's a one-way street in Kubernetes. So any solution that has like like delete never, maybe stuff like that. It feels like a fancy webhook.
Yeah, delete is yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know if you want to completely prevent deletion. Like when you do abandon, the RGD does not trigger a deletion. Like what you're talking about as a webhook is like nobody can delete it.
If I delete, yeah, that's right. If I delete a namespace by accident, how do I prevent accidental cascading deletes of all these important things? And the only answer is like
Webhooks.
Caverno has answers, right? They'll inject a annotation where you can put an annotation and then you can write some code that lets Caverno do it, but it's pretty heavy and it's expensive on the data plane path.
Okay.
Can you use like validation admission policies on delete events?
Is it gatekeeper?
Yes, it's a verb that you can validate.
Okay.
And you just say no.
So maybe Crow could just like configure some VAPs and literally like block the deletions that are like matching a specific thing. The only problem that I'm seeing in here is that apparently the object is gonna be null for delete requests. So you cannot access the metadata annotations nor the I knew something was tricky about like delete requests for VAPs, but I don't remember which one. I
It
think
might
this
have
might
to
be
be a real
problematic.
webhook,
Yes.
not the cell, but like a real webhook.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a new question. Crow does not have the ability to watch other clusters than the one it's running on, does it? Because that's usually the issue if you do something with a webhook, right? That you need it on every cluster.
Oh, that's correct. Like Crow doesn't do multi-cluster. I've never
Okay.
thought about the mutating webhook or webhook like issue in the past, but I can see why that could be a little bit challenging when you have like multiple clusters. Not challenging, but it's a little bit like crazy to me that you would take the same webhook and deploy it to multiple clusters without really having a good understanding of what's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think the metadata is also provided in the old object parameter here. You see there's an existing object.
Oh, it's only null for the objects, all objects. Okay.
Yeah. So you should still get the metadata in that old object field.
So I can see actually a world where like Pro manages VAPs. Like instead of deploying a full mutation webhook, we can generate some and be like, hey, you cannot delete this specific objects.
So, how would one then delete it? Like you need to change the RGD or
Delete
like
what?
so I know the intention is to prevent accidental deletion, but what about intentional deletion? Like you really want to delete it as
Yeah. So the things that we would only create the VAP if you say like, hey, delete never. Sorry, delete, abandon, or never. So if you don't set that one in there, we wouldn't set any like VAPs for you, which means that you can delete them. My only problem with this approach in here is that if you have 10,000 instances, you will end up with 10,000 VAPs. I know like match conditions in Kubernetes has a limit of 64. What is it? The so validations in here can take up to 64 expressions, meaning that even if you want to like be a little bit like greedy in here and do not deploy multiple VAPs, you will end up with multiple ones the moment you create multiple instances. So, and if you end up like creating multiple VAPs, I am pretty sure like this gonna have some performance issues on the API server side.
we for a given RGD, we could do some label matching for all objects created by that RGD. Or of a specific kind type. I'm sure there are like something we can figure out where we don't have to create one per object, but one per RGD. And
So you're saying that we could like match on the labels, we can do match conditions in here.
I'm hoping.
And
I don't know if it supports, but I'm speculating we can do it. Yeah.
yes, I can see that how that would work. So you would target the GVK match by labels saying like, hey, only the ones that are part of this RGD and managed by Crow.
Yeah.
And my validation is like you just like block the request. I think there is a request object. Yes, this one. So block the request. I think there's a verb in here. Operation. So if it's delete, just block it for every. Okay, yeah, I see. That would work. Um, anyways, I put this on 0.5. This looks like something good to do in the future. If someone is able to implement it before that, we'll take it. That's completely fine. Um, yeah, that's it. That's the main those are like the main issues I wanted to talk about with 0.4. I'll leave it up to open discussion right now.
Looking at KCC, and they've got like a deletion policy, and they've got a controller that actually is called the deletion defender. And it uses that annotation to just decide whether to delete the object or not, or to remove, not to skip it. Let me send a link.
Oh wow.
They've got an actual controller that does that. So maybe that's a route to take, and then you don't need to mess with admission policies.
So is this a controller that's watching like dealing with all the objects at once?
Yeah, so there's a global annotation that you can put on these resources to mark them like with a deletion policy of abandon, and then this controller watches for that specific annotation.
Arnie, do you know? I mean, since you're the KCC guy in here, do you know how this works?
I'm trying to see if it is a webhook that prevents the deletion. I don't think it implements the um, policy that we looked at just before this.
Yeah, it looks like a controller from at first the first look. We thank you for linking that. I'll add it to the notes. Uh, oh, I see that you have an item in the list in there. Did you have any special comments about this one, or are you more like, hey guys, I need a review?
Sorry, I didn't catch the name in the beginning. Were you talking?
As I said, Scott. Mr. Scott Nichols.
I think
Sorry,
he needs a review.
I was asleep.
All right, go back to sleep, Scott. I got you. He needs a review.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for this. I took an initial look and I want to do a deeper one. I definitely love the idea of doing what you're doing here with conditions.
I made some, editorially different decisions about stuff, but I revised the original PR to back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago. So
Mhm.
it makes technically an API breaking change because I changed some of the condition names because the original ones didn't make sense for future world and tried to split out kind of big chunks of functionality into subconditions. And then I implemented, which I think is pretty clever, this marker interface. So I like this is an evolving pattern of like how to do this the best way, but subconditions are directly tied to the implementation of the controller reconciling the resource. And the theory is that there's only two top level conditions that can exist for any resource for the entire population of the world, and that's ready or succeeded, depending on the life cycle of that resource.
Mhm.
the implementations bring their subconditions to explain what's happened, and you could collaborate across resources to have common subconditions. But as the reconciler works, it sets subconditions using the marker to help you organize like how to recompute what the top level condition should be. And so the recomputation logic is housed in something that already existed, the condition set, and I had to mutate a little bit. And then this problem of like, okay, well, I want to contain the logic of these mark methods. And that's what the marker is doing, is helping the specific RGD controller co-locate the one spot where we have the logic of where marking happens. In the future, there's other kinds of methods that tend to be handy, and the marker could implement a propagate. So if you want to propagate the status of a resource that you created and it has conditions itself, you use the marker to propagate its status to a certain subcondition. And so that's this marker is where that kind of logic would go. It's not necessarily an interface because it's more of a convenient. If you go to the reconciler, you can kind of see how it gets used. And so you make a marker and you attach it to the RGD, and then you kind of walk through how you're operating on that thing, and you're marking, you're marking that you failed to set up the label selector, or you mark the kind as ready, or whatever, right? So the logic that's behind the marker understands the overall state, and so that's what I came up with. I think it's a really nice compromise. In Knative, we put the marker as part of the API for the kind, but this is awkward because different controllers have different subconditions if they have different implementations, and so it doesn't really belong on the API. It's really the API of the controller reflected into the kind. Thanks for coming to TED Talk.
My first impression is I like it. I see what you're doing in here. Using the marker and setting literally like all the things that you see on the way.
Yeah, I tend to try to use subconditions to represent, like large intent of the controller's implementation. So that's what I came up with. Please take a look. And if someone has a better idea, I'm happy to hear it. This is not the only way. There's a bunch of ways to do this stuff. But it feels cleaner than trying to do a bunch of juggling inside of the controller logic. And I want to murder everybody when I see, like update status methods that goes and like looks around and then tries to retroactively understand what the heck happened in this loop. So avoid those as much as possible. Looking at that red code.
Yeah, I hear you talking. Hey, like more improvement to how we do things is good. I'll take it. Barney, at some point, I think you were unmuted. Did you want to say something?
No, this looks good. I'll also take a pass at it. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, conditions has always been like up to the implementers because Kubernetes unfortunately did not give strong enough guidelines.
Yep.
But us having some guidelines is good.
My history is I'm the duck type guy, and the only way duck typing works is if there is a sort of an opinionated contract with conditions, or else you just don't know when things are ready or when you should act on them. So the thing that happens after this is that anything that actually can observe RGDs can restrict its reconciliation until its top level ready condition is observe generation matching the generation of the resource. And otherwise, it can just ignore updates until it's, if you set the spec, you get an event until it's, anyway.
I linked a video to Scott's like famous TGI duck typing recording.
It's very
If
room
anyone
with
wants.
less cardboard.
It's a very interesting video if anyone is building controllers and want to like dive deeper into those concepts. It's just a very cool one.
The
I
other
think
one,
I've watched.
polymorphic reconcilers. Actually, can we go back probably like 40 minutes ago? We were talking about how there's like this idea of attaching to a kind, an RGD to a kind. What would happen? What would you say we could reconcile any kind? What if you could attach any kind to the RGD template? And just bear with me. So let's say you what if you attach an RGD to a service, like a Kubernetes service? You don't get to define the inputs, but you do get to produce a new thing out of the template of that thing.
Yeah, that sounds like a meta controller.
It's a meta controller, but like why wouldn't Crow do that?
Yeah. I had this conversation with someone on the Crow Slack, and they were like, we like meta controller, but we don't want feature creep in Crow. But this is an interesting idea, though. I agree.
Barney, that was me.
Yeah,
By the
I
way.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it becomes a bit heavy because you've got so many watches and reconciliations happening that you have to have a cache, and it takes a lot of, and all that stuff stored in memory, so it's a lot of overhead. So there's Meta controller that's built for that specific purpose, and I see Crow as an extension thereof. So what we do with Meta control is we black box a whole lot of kind of stuff we don't want our teams to mess with.
Mhm.
And the idea, then, this is why I'm quite interested in Crow, is like we want to do compositions for these teams of all these custom resources put together to make it simple. But we still want to have this black box where we got compliance stuff that's sitting there that guys can't touch, kind of thing. So I think they can complement each other
Yeah.
quite a bit. If we could have a Meta controller it's purposely built to do the kind of automation, to speak to APIs, to reconcile these kind of objects. Where I think Crow is really the power is the composition and being able to look at external resources and bring it in. My big idea that I had is we had this Puppet DB, which was pretty much our central kind of CMDB. And migrating away from this, we don't have anything like that in Kubernetes. So we've got these controllers that do reflection. They fetch data and they put it into the clusters kind of thing, so that we have the CMDB kind of stuff. But I don't see Crow doing that, because that's a lot of business logic. That's where you're writing some code to do a lot of that stuff or speaking to external APIs. I'm
Yeah.
not marketing Meta control at all, so I'm
No.
sorry.
That's
Comes across. Okay.
like, I'm happy. I mean, I worked with the author who wrote the initial meta controller. We were brainstorming. Like, I was doing my own implementation. He was doing that, and we were brainstorming. And I'm surprised to see it has its own life after so many years. So that's good.
Problem is there's not enough contributors and maintainers keeping it alive. There's like two of us at the moment that's keeping it going, and the only reason I'm keeping it going is because we heavily use it in our organization.
Yeah.
Mhm. Makes sense. Hey, thank you, folks. For the sake of time, since we have only 3 minutes, there's only three other points I want to like talk about real quick. I'm very happy to continue the conversation about like meta controller on Slack as well. Toolkit, I think you asking about the CLI, and yes, it is in the roadmap. In fact, we have a GSOC student, so Google Summer of Code students working on it as we speak right now. So we already bootstrapped the project and they started sending PRs. So it's currently in the process of being built. It's going to be very similar to what you do with Helm install, publish, like do all these fancy things with ECR, along with a lot of emulation, and you can even use it in your CI if you want. So that's the plan with the CLI. The other one is you're asking if we set the reconciliation period to 0, we cannot set it back to non-zero. Are you thinking about the Helm chart values?
No, not the Helmchart values. So let's say there is a moratorium period or a freeze period, and we do not want to do any change. So we set the CRO reconciliation period. By default, I think it's 10 hours, right? So we set it to 0 because we do not want any reconciliation to happen. But then we cannot set it back to non-zero.
But how do you set that value?
I mean, I haven't changed it, but in CRO, the reconciliation period, the default, it's 10 hours, right? The reconciliation happens after every 10 hours, I see, right? If I'm not wrong.
Oh, that is correct. But we are making changes where we are setting up watches, so it also reacts if any of the created objects change. But
So it should react to instance changes, and it's true. Like the default is 10 hours. The thing is that if you modify this value, and someone corrects me if I'm wrong, but if you modify the flags of a deployment, the pod is restarted. I think it's one of the fields that require pod restart. So if you change this value to 10 seconds and it's not working as 10 seconds reconciler, then we have a bug for sure.
oh, this is a Helm value. Okay. Yeah, I would expect the pod to restart.
I mean, that's the unless if someone tells me like, hey, in the last 2 versions something changed, but I know like those kind of modifications, like changing this value restarts the pod. If you're seeing that I have a question. When you set it to 0, what happens? It doesn't resync at all?
Yes, the reconciliation stops all the way. But from what I know, I mean, what the behavior in CRO is, like once we set it to 0, we cannot set it to non-zero.
Okay, that might be a bug. But what is your intent, Pulkit? Is it to do you want to pause CRO reconciliation for some time, or
Correct. For some time, I mean, due to some like freeze period or a moratorium period we have in our company. And for that purpose, we want to stop all that reconciliation. And then when we are back to, stopping the code freeze, then we want to again start back the reconciliation. So that is our use case. So yeah.
That's interesting because one of our customers also asked something similar. They wanted the ability to have hey, don't do any changes during this time, or at least the ability to turn on and turn off, essentially pause, but not at a CRO level. They wanted a more granular level.
Yeah, actually, I mean, the workaround that was suggested that then we need to migrate these resources to some other CRO instance. But then that would be a too much kind of overhead. So we wanted that we can just set it back to non-zero and have it working.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean,
I think we can start with the feature request and then discuss it and see how it should look like.
Okay, I can file that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I think the closest feature I've seen in Kubernetes is Cluster API. They had this annotation long time ago. I don't know if they still have it or not. But you can pause a reconciliation by setting an annotation like to skip the reconciliation.
But then let's say if we have thousands of resources, then we have to set this annotation on each of the managed resources, right?
Probably you want to put it at the RGD level. maybe we can have something like if you set on the RGD level, it blocks the reconciliation on all the instances. I mean, I would say this: probably the easiest way to reach that one is to scale the deployment to 0.
Yeah.
I think this is the fastest way. If you want like no reaction from Crow.
Craig, you have your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, so I just wanted to like say like is this like a once-off that you want to manually set it during a period of time, or is this more something like a reconciliation window, something similar to what Argo CD has where it says don't do anything within these specific hours?
I would think that would eventually become a requirement because, like, we see that getting added to all the cloud APIs that we build, or at least the important cloud APIs where they're like maintenance window or exclusion windows. So eventually we might have to do something, but what I'm more interested in, is it like a global thing or is it per namespace or is it per RGD? We need to iron that out.
Yep.
Just a quick recap or just something to mention there is we've had this before where we've had an incident. Suddenly the controller goes crazy and starts changing things willy-nilly. And we scaled to 0. So that was like the mitigation of that incident. But then you can't create any new objects on that during that time until that thing's being fixed forward, and then you can enable it again. So they
So
definitely
when you say scale to 0, you mean all of the deployments, right?
So whatever's mutating those objects or creating those objects or making those changes, those controllers we have to scale to 0.
Okay.
So it's not doing that. So we've had an incident before, for instance, where it was removing network policies across the board, and we had to stop this thing. Otherwise, we have production outage. Find the root cause, fix it, and then test it, redeploy, turn it on, and all the network policies came back. So some way I think this is also great for incidents to say, hey, stop reconciling. So I'm not sure if it could just be a Helm change because there might be, depending on how you deploy this in your environment, or whether it's some kind of runtime change that you can apply.
All right, folks. Last point in here, and I know we're over time. Fabian, you put cell optionals. Oh, you have a cell optionals PR?
Yeah, I don't want to consume too much of your time. We have the cell optionals PR still open, and my colleague Jakob would hate me if I don't at least ask you guys to have another look because he put quite some time in it.
Sweet. I'll put it in my queue. Oh, I see Jobet's reviewed. Okay, nice.
Yeah, so not too much to talk about. Just a kind request to have a look at it again if you find some time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is important. Since we have the PR, like I think this is gonna like land in the next release or even patch release.
All right.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, folks. Really appreciate your time and staying up to now. And I wish you have a wonderful week.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.